Well, here I am again. It's great to really bring together other industry leaders in this space, and I'm proud to be joined by my panelists. We're going to talk about the progress that's being made at a number of different companies and go into a little bit more detail in this executive focus. And so, just to introduce the group, it's going to be Pascal Roquet from ST. Fawn Bergen from Intel, and then I'll be joined by Nasreen Chopra from Applied Materials. I think what we're going to do is we're going to take each of those panelists in turn. They'll share a little bit about their corporate visions, and then we'll have some time at the end for a question and answer period where we'll be able to accept questions from the audience as well. So with no further ado, let me turn it over to Pascal.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So first of all, I would like to thank Applied Materials to invite STMicroelectronics today to share a few elements of the sustainability journey of STMicro. So I propose to quickly introduce the company, but most of you should already know the company. So we are creators and makers of technology. We have a significant footprint worldwide in terms of employees, so 46,000 people, $10 billion of revenue last year, and we have our own 11 manufacturing sites, both front end and back end for sure, mainly in Europe and in Asia Pacific. Even if of course we are present, as you know, in US for sales support and marketing. I would like to switch directly to the sustainability, and you will retrieve many links to what have been already mentioned, especially by Ajit. So the sustainability approach for ST is not so far from many of the actors in the business. But we are there to create sustainable technology. When we talk about technology, for us, is developing process technology, but as well products, of course, in order to support our customers to develop their own application. We are doing it in a sustainable way, and sustainable way means for us, of course, taking care of people. Of course, we are talking about health and safety, so this thing and human rights, which is obvious. And the second pillar for the sustainability way is, of course, the environment, which I will go much more in detail, especially in the carbon, carbon neutrality, and of course, carbon objective that we have and that we are accelerating. For sure, we are doing that to be a sustainable company, for sure. So it means that we need to do many actions for stakeholders, internal and of course external stakeholders, which is more and more important, including risk management, which is key for a business like us. For ST, the journey of sustainability is not new. We really started a long time ago. So ST was created in 1987, and formally we start all the journey in the 90s. Here I just put a few figures, very few figures that will not go in detail, but just to showing that since 1994, we are embarked to not only to measure, but to progress in few domains. So here I put, of course, the greenhouse gas, as well the water. We already mentioned that water is key in the industry, semiconductors, for sure. Waste, we reduce very drastically our landfill footprint. In terms of purely sustainability, but we continue to grow in terms of sales, almost multiplied by 4, the number of employees as well, multiplied by 2, and take care about the safety. For us is very important, people first. We have a dedicated program for that, and we demonstrate that doing a huge effort on safety it's key for us. Now we are talking about mainly climate change. So the first question is very simple. Are we concerned by climate change? Well, I'm sure that you already know the answer, and the answer is definitely yes. And I really would like, and I'm very happy that Ajit have already mentioned all the key topics, because here you will retrieve all the key topics that have been already mentioned, why we are concerned. So in few words, I start with resilience. So everybody can understand that today, nobody can say that we are protected, nor our site, nor our people, from the effect of climate change. Everybody know what happened in Taiwan recently, as well in the US, in the Texas as well recently. So nobody can say that we are again that we can escape for the climate change risk. I think nothing new for you. The second point is already mentioned is investors. We're talking about ESG. All our main investors are for sure now focusing on responsible company ESG, so environmental and societal, as had been mentioned again a few minutes ago. Customer pressure, it has been done as well. It has been mentioned already. All the large customers, for sure, and not only the large one, by the way, but the big one is, of course, pushing us to do more, to do quickly, and I just put one of the example that you know very well that have been as well mentioned is Apple, which is public, of course. We are joining the clean energy program of Apple, which again makes sense in order to accelerate the renewable energy percentage in the semi industry. But regulation or law very quickly, more and more, nothing is new here. We have an accelerating of number of regulation and law linked to again climate change, but as well overall environment. And I just mentioned as well here the Europe, the European Green Deal, which had been announced last year, so in 2020, sorry, was ready to push the whole continent to be carbon neutral in 2050, with intermediate step in 2030 to reduce divide by 2 the emissions, more than 2. And the last one, which has been as well mentioned by Ajit, and I do confirm as well, we can do confirm during the interview of young generation or new talents, that clearly these topics of what are we doing in terms of responsibility is in the agenda of many young generation and people when they join us, or of course, even for those who want to stay. So this is the main issue, the main topic that again is clearly at the agenda. But we have joined the leaders. So formally we mentioned SBTI, but as well CDP. So we joined the club of the climate. So the A-list member since this year. So we're reporting since many years, and year after year we continue to grow in terms of ranking. And what we have announced again end of last year, sorry, the formal commitment of the company to be carbon neutral in 2027. In a nutshell, few key milestones that we have decided. First of all, we mentioned as well, you mentioned the science-based target, which is very important as well for us. It's a formal and fundamental methodology in order to have a very good trust of what we are doing, because this is very important as well. So we have an intermediate step with a validated target to be on the 1.5 scenario, which is again the COP21 decided in 2015. Sorry. Then again the 27 carbon neutrality, and we had as well an important topic, which is the 100% renewable energy. I will detail the 5 work streams very shortly. The roadmap is very clear. We have to reduce our direct emission. We have to invest on energy saving. We will innovate to find more renewable energy for sure, minimize indirect emission, and for sure compensate remaining emissions. So very quickly, I will just do a few figures to be very concrete in our objective. So we have the objective to divide by 2 or direct emission, which, as you know, for the semi is mainly the PFC. So we have a clear roadmap to continue to accelerate the abatement for the fabs which are already in place, and of course to abate 100% for the new fabs. The second point is energy saving. Again, it has been mentioned at the introduction. For sure, we will accelerate as well all the program to save energy, because we need energy, and for us it's mainly electricity, as most of the semi, 90% of energy is for us coming from its usage is electricity. So we have a strong plan to do this. The third work stream, in order to decrease our indirect emissions linked to the scope 2, again, mainly electricity, so increase and accelerate the percentage of green energy. Starting more than 10 years ago, year after year, we increase the percentage. We have 2 clear objectives: 100%, again, as I say, to support Apple products. That's the first intermediate objective, and to use 100% renewable energy by 2027, again, in order to reduce as much as possible our scope 2 emissions. Very quick view on the work stream 4, which is linked to minimize our scope 3, our main area of scope 3. So for us, it's product transportation, business travel, and employee commuting. Again, the idea that despite the growth of the company, which is of course a good news, we will make flat the emissions linked to this. So which means new effort in order to minimize again the emissions related to the transportation, mainly transportation again on product and people. And to finish, as you know, as we already have said, as it will be really impossible to reduce to zero, at least at the short term. Short term for us is 27. For sure, we will compensate. And the idea for us, of course, is not to use only reforestation, but innovative project to capture carbon. There's plenty of new projects worldwide now to accelerate as well on innovation in terms of carbon sequestration. So to conclude, we have a roadmap. We are strongly committed with this focus on carbon neutrality. And as we said, and again, this is why I'm very happy to be there with you. We are all actors of sustainability. So it's not only us, it's, of course, it's many people, including, of course, all the ecosystem of the semi. And again, Applied Material is part of the ecosystem. Thanks for your attention.
That was great, Pascal. What a really comprehensive approach ST is applying, but I also want to congratulate you guys on the tremendous progress that you've made. Really amazing over the last 25 years. So, you know, definitely a beacon to us all, not only in terms of vision, but also performance historically. At this point, I'd like to introduce Fawn Bergen from Intel, who's going to take us through some of the concepts that Intel's applying to this ESG and sustainability challenge.
Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here this morning sharing Intel's sustainability strategy. I'm Fawn Bergen, as Chris mentioned, and I lead Intel's global sustainability group. First, I want to take you to our current corporate responsibility strategy, and then tell you kind of where sustainability falls in that overall strategy. First, our corporate responsibility strategy is tied to our business objectives and our purpose as a company, which is to create world-changing technology that enriches the lives of everyone on Earth. Last year, we announced what we call our 2030 RISE strategy, which is our commitment to be a responsible, inclusive, and sustainable company where we enable solutions through our technology, innovation, and the passion and expertise of our employees. So you can see in there the sustainable pillar. We have 3 tiers to this corporate responsibility strategy, or RISE. One is the operational goal. So what are we doing internally as well as our supply chain? The next tier is broader. This is looking at the industry overall, and whether it's initiatives that Intel's leading or Intel participates in, but we know that we can't solve all of these challenges on our own. We have to be working together as an industry. And the top is what we call global challenges. Those are our aspirations and where we want to be as a company. And these are initiatives, these are also in some cases working with customers or suppliers or other stakeholders. But it's really that North Star of where we want to go as a company. This is a summary of our sustainability goals within our operations. And that's where the group that I lead at Intel, where our focus is manufacturing and operations. But we have sustainability goals across our entire value chain. This table here summarizes those sustainability goals with the baseline year of 2020 out to 2030, the S in the RISE pillar. And these are what I'm going to talk about on the next couple of slides this morning. The first 3, we all know climate is really important. It's really top of mind for everybody when we're talking about environmental sustainability. We have 3 goals, as I mentioned. One is to reduce our absolute scope 1 and 2 emissions. The next is 100% renewable electricity globally, conserving energy across all of our operations, a goal to achieve net positive water, and 2 goals related to zero waste to landfill and circular economy. And I'll share more about all of these goals in the next couple of slides, in addition to how we're achieving them and some of the opportunities that we have that I think, or I hope, might spark some interest by attendees here today. First, our climate goals. As I mentioned, we have a goal to reduce our scope 1 and 2 absolute emissions. And that goal is a 10% reduction from 2020 to 2030. And explain a little bit about that goal. You can see on the chart on the bottom right of my slide, and this is taken from our corporate responsibility report, so you can pull this up and view it at any point. These are the blue dots. Those are our scope 1 and 2 greenhouse gas emissions over the last 2 decades. So you can see we've already made significant reductions in our emissions. And this is, as an industry, we worked with the Semiconductor Industry Association and World Semiconductor Council to develop best practices and greenhouse gas reduction opportunities as an industry. And so when we set this goal, we're building on the reductions that we've done in the past. And we started last year as our first year. We were already at over 70% renewable electricity. So you can see we've already hit a lot of those wins in reducing our emissions. So getting down even further is very challenging because in some cases there are no solutions that exist today. And I'll talk just a little bit more about that piece. But as you can see also the chart on the right, the way that we are reducing our emissions in scope 1, we are a manufacturing company. We're a global semiconductor manufacturing company. And when you look at our scope 1 emissions and scope 2, it's largely driven by manufacturing. And so a lot of tech companies that we're compared to where maybe manufacturing is in their supply chain, I think it is an important thing to understand when you look at our footprint. So, we have been, as I mentioned, reducing our greenhouse gas emissions for more than 2 decades. We have invested heavily in abatement in our factories and always looking at optimizing our process and looking for chemical or gas substitutions that with a lower global warming potential. And energy conservation. So we have a goal to conserve 4 billion kilowatt hours of energy by 2030. And this is in addition to all of our energy conservation. This is a very robust program, so it's been in place for a long time. This is on top of everything we've done. So to kind of keep finding those opportunities to conserve energy takes a lot of innovation, creativity, and collaboration, across our company. And renewable electricity, as I mentioned, when we started last year, first year of our 2030 goals, we were at a little over 70% renewable electricity. Last year, we increased that to 82%. And this is really across the globe. This is all of our operations, not just manufacturing or not just, office sites, but everything. And we've been 100% in the US for many years. We are 100% across Europe, in Israel and Malaysia, we added last year. And so that remaining about 19%, primarily is in Asia. So we are very well on our way to get to 100% by 2030. And some of the opportunities, I think this is where, when we talk about the opportunities to reduce our carbon footprint, to work as an industry, to work with innovation and companies like the attendees here today, a challenge that we have, you've already heard here many times today, probably everybody knows semiconductors are in demand. There's a shortage, so there's this huge opportunity. Our products, semiconductors, are part of that solution for mitigating or adapting to climate change. So we are part of the solution. But with our company growth and that increasing manufacturing complexity, that also creates a lot of challenges and hopefully opportunities where we can work as an industry. It's going to take a large scale R&D effort to really come up with those solutions that don't exist today. And that includes greenhouse gas abatement that we use. So how can we improve that to be, more efficient, to use less resources like energy, to achieve those greenhouse gas reductions. Next, I'll share with you our water goal. So our overall water goal is to achieve net positive water by 2030. And to put it more simply, what that means is that we will be putting back more fresh water than we use. And to explain a little bit about that, we're doing that in two ways. One is conserving water in our operations and local partnerships. And our goal is to reach 60 billion gallons. We wanted to repeat that again by 2030. And last year alone, we conserved about 7.1 billion gallons. So you can see we're making great progress there. And that, for conservation for us, that means we look at those opportunities across our operations, everything from landscaping and office buildings to actually manufacturing and our ultra pure water treatment and use facilities. So in addition to like all of the investments we've been doing for a number of years, we've built 3 large-scale water reclaim facilities in Israel and then 2 in the US, in Oregon and Arizona. This allows us, this is at the scale of a typical like a municipality water treatment plant. This allows us to treat and reuse a large volume of water on site. And 2 of those are in full operation, and our facility in Arizona is ramping up. So excited, it's just been exciting to see the results there. The second piece of this goal is to restore more than 100% of the fresh water we consume. And to explain what I mean when I say consume, about 20% of all of the water that we take in, that's the global average, is lost to evaporation, mostly in cooling towers. Some of it is also taken up by plants and landscaping. And so that piece is what we call our gap in our water balance. It's the piece that we're taking in, but we're not treating and returning back to our community. So what we've started doing in 2017 is funding projects in our watersheds that restore an equivalent amount of water. And these are a portfolio of projects. They're not projects that Intel implements. We don't create them. We support them. We find the partners such as the Nature Conservancy and National Forest Foundation. They're the experts, and so we select projects and fund them. And so we've made great strides. Last year, first year of our 2030 goal, we were at 90% of that total piece. So 90% towards that 100% goal. And as I mentioned, with our carbon goals, it's the same opportunities, the same challenges. The company growth and increasing manufacturing complexity really impacts all of our sustainability goals. And that's where, as an industry, this is not just an Intel opportunity, but as an industry that there's opportunities to do more. So the last piece I'll share are waste and circular economy goals, also a really really important part of our overall sustainability story. And in particular, our circular economy goal, really working with our suppliers is key. So our first goal is 0 waste to landfill. So that's total waste, all of our waste, looking for opportunities to divert from landfill, reuse, recovery, recycling. And the second piece is implementing circular economy strategies for at least 60% of our manufacturing waste streams. And absolutely, partnership with our suppliers is critical here, because we have to work with them to have those opportunities to upcycle this waste. And the ways that we're achieving that is, I mentioned, kind of that looking at our waste streams and understanding the opportunities to divert. upcycling, working with our suppliers, and looking for opportunities to continue to reduce our overall waste generation. And as I mentioned, again, here, the opportunity related to our growth, where right now, Intel specifically is going through a period of significant growth, which is really, really exciting. But it also has challenges, and we look at this as an opportunity for us to how do we continue to drive sustainability through our growth, construction of new sites, expansion of existing sites. And one of the challenges or opportunities in waste, I know a lot of people are in the same boat, is available infrastructure in our communities. It's not feasible to truck waste halfway across the country. You need to have that local infrastructure. So that's something that we continue to work with our communities to help solve some of those challenges and hopefully drive more opportunities. So that's it, and I will hand it back over to Chris. I did just include a couple quick links here if you're interested to read more about our corporate responsibility strategy or anything about our goals in particular. Thank you, Chris.
Fawn, that was terrific. I really admire the RISE concept and how it's so comprehensive, responsible, inclusive, sustainable, and enabling. And I also wanted to just call out, when you talk about inclusive, I love the real live subtitles while you're giving your talk. What a great way to involve the hearing impaired in your presentation. So something definitely for us all to think about as we continue our work communicating. So with no further ado, I'd love to bring on board Nasreen Chopra from Applied Materials, and she's going to go into more detail about the 3x30 initiative that I mentioned during my short talk earlier. Nasreen, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chris, and thanks to my panelists. This has been a really, fantastic opportunity to hear what everybody is saying about this important topic in the semiconductor industry. So good morning and good afternoon to everybody. As Chris mentioned, I'd like to say a couple of more words of what we're doing here at Applied Materials and how we view this important topic. So you saw this just a few minutes ago earlier this morning, but the reason I want to really start with this visionary commitment that Applied Materials has made is that really this type of a framework has enabled some fantastic activities across the company. As Chris mentioned, we use it as a measure of our performance. So corporate, engineering, facilities, EH&S, supply chain, all of those it's a very comprehensive approach, and it's really this vision and this mission is really acting like person on the moon by the end of the decade, right? It's really having that energy and focus to the work that we do. So we've really leveraged that vision substantially for this past year. Okay, so a little bit more about the goals. For Applied Materials, a strong engineering community, it's really all about the numbers. If you've got numbers, you've got people's attention. And so what we've done here is to really quantify the sustainability targets. But in this case, it's not actually just only about the numbers, but given the newness of the space, it's also about the units. And the units, we were thoughtful about how we look at this. And the reason is because with the variation of equipment that we make, from implant to CMP, dielectric deposition, etch, et cetera, we needed to find ways of looking at the energy reduction in a way that enabled the right focus, yet kind of treated everybody more in a normalized fashion. And so we've really, converged on kilowatt per hour per wafer pass. And this has been a way that we are measuring the performance of all of our product platforms. Similarly, in chemical consumption, it's very easy, and I have a little bit more about this, but it's very easy to just say reduce chemicals. Well, we were doing that in order to help our customers with their cost of operations. But in this case, it's not just about that. It's actually about the chemical impact. And the chemical impact varies with the type of chemistries that one is using to have the performance on the wafer. And again, in order to unify this across these various platforms, kilogram CO2 per wafer pass is a good indication of the impact that chemical has on the environment. The clean room space, that's a little bit more straightforward. It's square footage per wafer pass. And what you can see here is that as we look at these goals, we really need to, again, leverage across our engineering expertise. So, obviously, early on with the design, engineering design people are involved with looking at the footprint of the tools. And then obviously our process and chemical expertise, looking at what we can do with the chemical impact, and then operations, design, all of these. So the other thing is that basically we've got hardware engineers, software engineers, design engineers, process, everybody really looking at this topic. And if we look down the decade, basically, the equipment, the cycle time for change is not quarterly. So for new architectures, we really are looking kind of later on to impact the footprint. But there's quite a few activities we can do in the near term, which we have been doing, which is really looking at the energy savings for upgrades in software and hardware on our existing platforms or existing designs. So it's really launching a combined approach of really looking at the entire system. And when we look at that, we really, first of all, it's, in the spirit of quantifying, we really first have to find out where we are. That has been, to understand where we can focus, where the biggest bang for buck is. So with that approach, we have really looked at from anywhere from the subfab and what the tool is consuming to the support equipment that we have, and this is really, this area specifically is, I think, an opportunity, a further opportunity for a lot of innovation. Chamber parts, of course, and again, this becomes big to the type of product. However, as a category, it is really about where the process is happening. And then, of course, the overall system and how we're looking at the platforms. So with this kind of holistic approach, what you see is, and I want to bring this up to as far as what's happened with our industry. There's this model for looking at systems with the Kinefin model, which helps divide and kind of organize the systems. So we've got simple systems. Well, we've never worked with simple systems in the semiconductor equipment industry. So it's always been about very complicated systems. But the difference between the complicated systems and the complex systems, which is kind of the arena we're in right now, the complex systems, is that the components in complicated systems are very tightly coupled, whereas in complex systems, components are not as tight, they're loosely coupled. So there is a relationship between all these parts from hardware and process, but as we go into more and more complexity on the equipment level, we're seeing that that there's a loose combination. And the reason I bring that up is because one of the important challenges is, of course, the chemical impact. And if we look across the decades, the complexity of the materials we've been using has been going up. So in the 80s, we were really looking at kind of the top part of the periodic table. In the 90s, titanium, tantalum, tungsten, we started to get deeper into the periodic table. In the 2000s is where there was an explosion, and we really, the semiconductor industry has been really, taking the unique features that come with various elements and kind of combining them to get the performance that is required. And so this picture kind of hopefully helps you see the complexity. And so far, we've been looking at this in order to get the best performance on the wafer with the, managing the interfaces and modeling the grain boundaries, et cetera. And as I showed in the previous slide, now we're looking at really modeling the entire system. And so fortunately, we can leverage the deep expertise that we have with modeling to really look at this overall challenge holistically. A few more words about the chemical impact. It's, as I said, this isn't just about reduction. This is really about chemical impact. Now, when you start looking deeper into what is chemical impact, you have a choice as to where in the supply chain you want to interface with it. And in this case, what we're choosing to do is really take a cradle to grave approach. So cradle, of course, is where you are counting the chemical production and the transportation. So that is the full life cycle inventory of that particular material. Then, and that's kind of cradle to gate. So gate is basically at the as it in the fab as it enters the process chamber, the fab in the process chamber. So with the process chamber, we actually depending on the process, there's various different species that also get generated. And then you're really looking at that set of byproducts that is abated, and then what the abatement process impact has, and eventually what goes back into the environment. So that's the grave. And with this approach, when we're quantifying our kilograms per CO2 equivalency, it's really across this entire value chain. So really want to make sure to look at things holistically. My colleagues, Pascal and Fern have already spoken about water and waste. So we are also looking at that and making sure that wherever we can drive for reductions and whatever designs in our tools can enable that, that would be our focus. So as I wrap things up, I want to kind of bring us back to the tenets of manufacturing. The semiconductor industry has had a, amazing, reputation of high productivity, high quality, lowering cost. And we've really been able to do this. We've already used the innovation of machine and material, and really to address these markets, which continue to increase. And it's really been about the human know-how and really leveraging that. So the way that I see this whole era that we're going into is that we've already got this phenomenal success of having delivered. I mean, that people look at the semiconductor industry and everybody, the public sees us as, amazing innovators and successfully delivering to the commitments that we make to our customers and to the public that makes use of our, of the products that we make. And the same way, now as we see the impact of the energy, the chemicals that we're using, we want to really have a call for action that this isn't the picture we were looking for. We're really looking to come together as an industry and literally make possible a better future. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Nasreen, for that outstanding presentation. And I also want to thank you for introducing me to the Cynefin framework, which Google tells me is a Welsh word for habitat. So what could be more appropriate when you're making the decision making that we have to do here? It's wonderful to bring the entire panel back together. We'd love to have a discussion really about some of this. You can see that all of these companies have frameworks in place, goals, they're tracking progress, but it's a complex area and it's a very, increasingly complex landscape. What that does though, is it creates the opportunity for innovation. And this is a conference about ventures and innovation and new ideas. And so, love really to approach this Q&A with that spirit. I'd also like to just reiterate the call to the folks watching us that we are able to take questions. And so please do write in the chat room with any questions you may have about the presentations that you've just seen. But to kick off the discussion, Pascal, I wanted to return to something that you'd mentioned, which is the European Green Deal. And it seems like to me, the EU is a step or two ahead of us in the US on ESG reporting. Although clearly the Biden administration is making progress in this area. Wanted to really kind of hear from the European perspective about what you think that's the Green Deal is going to have in terms of an impact on your operations and on the achievement of sustainability goals in general.
Yes, so thanks, Chris, for this question. So that's true that Europe, since the European continent, let's say since a while now, have on the bracket a tradition to innovate and always to push as well in the environment. And no need to come back on a long time ago where some country in Europe were already pushing from green activities, including renewable energy. We have plenty of North Europe, especially in the north of Europe. So let's say that there is a part of cultural or tradition, let's say, focus on environment, especially on environment perspective. Saying that, what is sure is that now as well, the European is now pushing to accelerate. I think the knowledge and the awareness of the risk of the climate change have been definitely, let's say, embedded in most of our political first and as well as in Europe. So then it means that the European let's say community as a large is going in this direction. So what I can comment here is the Green Deal, in fact, is a way. It doesn't solve everything, but what is important, and you mentioned as well the impact, both the challenge and the impact. In fact, the fact to have a common, let's say, scheme or trend is pushing again commission, law, regulation. I mentioned even if nobody loves about regulation, but that's true that when we have a common, at least at the continent level, a scheme for going in the same direction with the same objective, it's definitely help to really put at the agenda of many companies. Again, the Green Deal is not only for the semi, of course. All industry are concerned, and all the countries in Europe are concerned. So in fact, at least the advantage of this kind of huge trend is force, again, all stakeholders to going in the direction, because we know that each company has different history. We know that we have different background and we have different speed of making things happen. With a common time frame and a formal goal, it's on the bracket positively force all the stakeholders to go in the same direction. So at least this is the advantage which I may comment today for the Green Deal. So yes, so there is an impact. We are not doing, as you have understood, not only for this, for sure, because again we are proactive, and but definitely it's help again to move in the same direction.
I think that's right, and also quite profound, because Fawn, you touched on the challenges of having already achieved a great deal of progress, as has Pascal and ST. The challenges of making even more progress going forward, and so how it's very difficult to keep those goals, accelerating. So I think, again, in the spirit of innovation, what opportunities do you see in the value chain? What opportunities do you see, Fawn, for collaboration on some of the more challenging issues that you're facing with the RISE goals?
Well, I think sorry.
Oh. That question was for me, right, Chris?
It is. It is.
Yeah.
I mean, you're all welcome to contribute. Absolutely.
No, please, Fawn, please. Sorry.
I mean, that it's critical to have both. The challenges that we're facing as a world, as a company, we're never going to get there if we don't have both. It can't just be manufacturing. It can't just be supply chain. We need to work together for those common goals. And for us, what happens in our supply chain, what tools or equipment we purchase, what chemicals we purchase, all of that drives change, impacts in manufacturing. And so we need to partner, we need to partner with our suppliers and customers and other stakeholders. They're really, I think we used to, as companies, we used to look at the direct impact. And now that maturation, that progress that we're making is we have to look at the entire footprint. When we talk about a product, it's all of that footprint, all the way from supply to use to end, where it ends up, or disposal. So they're really, I don't think I can overstate the importance of all of those pieces working together. We know that we can't just, for example, push those requirements up to our suppliers. We need to do them as well, and vice versa. So it's truly a partnership, and that's how we approach working with our supply chain as well, because it needs to be both.
I agree. And I also want to emphasize to the audience that I keep looking to my right because I'm watching the chat room, not because I'm not paying attention to these great panelists. And one of the questions that's come in from the chat room, I think I'd like to pose for Nasreen is, Applied Materials is measuring our chemical impacts via CO2 to standardize. Does CO2 generated from the abatement process representatively capture all chemical impacts? It seems some chemicals may have stronger environmental impacts than CO2. So that seems like a relatively straightforward question for you, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Sure. Yeah, so maybe I should have emphasized the kilogram CO2 equivalent, and you're absolutely there. The NF3, argon, helium, all of these have a different chemical footprint, but so it's really kilogram CO2 equivalent. That's the clarification that I should have made.
That's great. That's what I assumed as well. I mean, I guess maybe one of the things that might be worth thinking about in that regard is, the opportunity for standard setting and, having a kind of uniform approach to this. I don't know, Nasreen, if you want to build on that thought.
Yeah. No, absolutely, Chris. I think this is where, Pascal and Fawn have also talked about the collaboration and how it's important across the supply chain. Frankly, a lot of the goals that Intel has, it's like we need to work together. If the equipment needs to have a performance on the wafer, it needs to also have a performance for the environment. And that's something that, we can't do by ourselves, and our customers can't do. And so it's important for our customers that we actually really make that a reality. But there's a lot of, but it's a new space. And so there's a lot of opportunity to set some standards. And, I kind of look at the appliance industry and how they have these Energy Star ratings of refrigerators and this and that. So, we're looking to work through the industrial consortiums that we have and see what we can do as far as really, defining the standards. So I think really, in a sense, it's interesting because the semiconductor industry has, matured so much that, and the standards have actually been a core of the engine that has enabled that, right? If anything, from just making sure that all the wafers, we've got 200 millimeter to 300 millimeter, the industry moved together. A lot of these things, the roadmaps were, and the standards that we set were crucial to the efficiency with which we could deliver the products. And so similarly, I think in the energy space here, I think there's a chance to do the same thing.
Agreed. Another question from the chat room, really actually probably for all the panelists. We'll have a little free-for-all to see who answers first. But for your 2030 sustainability goals that your company is already close to achieving, are there any plans to reevaluate and set even more ambitious goals once those original goals are achieved? So I don't know, Pascal, maybe you want to lead off on that one?
Yeah, I can start with this one. I think Ajit in the introduction mentioned for sure today we are in the carbon neutrality. So the commitment is carbon neutrality. So mainly again or direct emission or Scope 2 and part of our Scope 3. But we are conscious that the next step is to go to the net and to include the net zero, whatever the name. But for sure, I will not say today, and I will not inform. And sorry for that, I will not commit today in this forum. But we have in mind that the next step is of course to go beyond what we have. So we take it as a first step. Very seriously, again, very trustable in kind of both data and way of doing it. But yes, the next step will be to englobe, let's say, the whole, including the whole supply chain. But that will be for sure the next step. And as well for the science-based target, we know that for the time being, science-based target is Scope 1 and Scope 2, as long as your Scope 3 is below 40%. But we know when you reduce Scope 1 and Scope 2, after by definition your Scope 3 higher above 40, and then you will be obliged. So yes, the next step will be most probably for us to go to the net zero.
Yeah, and I like that. And you touched on this in your presentation about compensating for remaining emissions and the need to, take those steps that will help us to get toward net zero and reduce the Scope 3, which, is much more challenging. Yeah. I don't know, Fawn, if you have any builds on that.
I can say that we're never done with our goals. I mean, it's not just an end state, it's a continuous process. We do, go through a formal process to set the goals, but the work that is done to get to what that goal is, we do benchmarking throughout the year, looking at, what is leadership, because right now there's so much going on. You see so many announcements from companies. So we're always looking at kind of what is leadership, what would it take for Intel to get there if we're not already, and what is that, the next commitment we need to get to meet our customers' goals that they're setting and investors what they're expecting of us. So it is, I would say it's a continuous process, and I don't think we'll ever be done per se.
Yeah, no, it's definitely sustainability and ESG in general is a continuous process, and the bars keep getting moved, and in a good way. I mean, I think obviously, companies make some progress, but we have a lot more still to do, which is, I think, implied by those long-term goals. I don't know, Nasreen, did you want to jump in?
I was just gonna, similarly to the, my panelist comments, that it's important, I think, to have targets so that we do have some goals. Like I mentioned, the engineering community is, very, it's having a number to focus on really helps to unify the work, right? Otherwise, it's like best effort. So here you've got that. But on the other hand, this is something that work is never done, as Fawn mentioned, and we do have already a kind of a culture of continuous improvement. CIP is something that is kind of also a very big part of the our industry and what we've been able to achieve. So we want to leverage that towards sustainability as well.
Yeah. So I have another question from the chat room, which I have a feeling will be geared to you, Nasreen. It's a more technical question. Are we considering, but everybody's welcome to answer it, are we considering the environmental impact of materials that we use, including mining for rare elements, and the need to reclaim these from waste parts and etch byproducts, and also the scarcity of some of these elements. So maybe Nasreen, you want to lead off on that one, and we can have other comments.
Sure, yeah. So on the production part, we definitely are already counting that part of it. As I mentioned, it's cradle. So there's fortunately there's been work done on quantifying that for a set of materials, and most of the materials we found basically that we use, we're able to get that data and that information reliably from sources that have been focused on. So the production and also transportation, that the quantification is there. I think when it comes to the recycle and that part of it, I think frankly is a little less mature at the moment. I know we obviously some of the kind of high ESG focused materials, their priority. But I think there's more that needs to be done as far as how we're going to recycle, especially when you look at the 10,000X and the products that our equipment enable and how that comes in. But I know Apple and several of the other end product users are looking at this very aggressively as well. So we're, I think as a whole industry, we'll be addressing that, but we address more the production angle at the moment.
That's great. Any builds on that, Fawn or Pascal?
I don't know if Pascal, you're welcome to jump in, but we do actually, and have for a number of years, we do quantify and report all of our scope 3 greenhouse, and specifically speaking of climate, we do quantify and report all of our scope 3 categories that are relevant. And I think we're the only semiconductor company I've seen that does include all of those categories. And I would say the work that's being done, scope 3 categories in general are kind of broad estimations. Sometimes maybe you use fleet information versus like tracking every vehicle. And so the process of continuing to refine those calculations is something that we work on every year. But yes, we include supply chain as part of our carbon footprint reporting.
Great. Well, I know we're coming near to time, but my friend John has told me we're allowed to eat a little bit into the break if we need to. So I'd love to ask you guys all one last question. And you're welcome to also use it as a kind of a summary. But given the theme of this forum, what innovation opportunities do you see in ESG for entrepreneurs in our industry? And what advice can you give them on the best ways that we can, put capital and resources to help achieve some of these challenging goals that we have? Nasreen, why don't you start?
Sure.
Let's mix it up.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you asking that question. In my presentation, I had shown the picture of a tool and the subfab components and et cetera. But what I would like to maybe request to entrepreneurs out there is that there are parts, when you look at the overall system, there are parts like heat exchangers and chillers that have performed perfectly well for their intended purposes for literally decades now, and haven't really required a lot of innovation or change. But here, given that it's not just performance of of keeping a certain part at a particular temperature, it's actually beyond that, where you want to use less energy in order to do that, for example, right? So I would encourage people to really start with a clean sheet potentially for some of these, especially in this component space, where they're likely are low-hanging fruit because the problem hasn't been looked at with this lens. And so instead of just like taking the current designs and trying to make changes, which that's also possible, but with true innovation in mind, take the problem statement. Requirement of keeping X part at Y temperature, and really see what is the most efficient, most compact, flexible. So if customers need to make changes, way of achieving that, that result for keeping something at a certain temperature, for example. So I would say the component space, I think, is very rich. I think the chemical is also very compelling, but I do think that's more challenging. And but with a lot of combinatorial techniques, et cetera, that are out there right now, there's opportunity for that as well.
Yeah, that's great. And you touched on the need for a combined approach in the short term, hardware and software, while our installed base is still there. So there's like you say, there's a lot of innovation opportunities within the entire infrastructure of the fab. Pascal, any thoughts on this innovation challenge?
Yeah, just a few words on top of on the bracket, the classical innovation, like you mentioned, that have been already mentioned by Nasreen about the equipment. Of course, energy saving. We know that we need more and more energy, so it means that we need to increase the efficiency. I just would like to comment as well that innovation is as well a change. I'm talking about mindset. I'm talking about change of decision making linked to this. And just to give you an example, for us, we are really talking about transformation. By the way, for the carbon neutrality, we have set a transformation office. And the transformation is not a name for a nice word on the PowerPoint, but it's really a fundamental, because we need to change as well the mindset, especially when we are deciding, taking decision between OPEX, CAPEX, when we invest. Now we need to integrate formally, again, the carbon, the megawatt, which is already the case, because you know that buying energy is, of course, is not for free, but as well to have in all our decision process, top management decision process. When we invest, it must be now embedded within our decision process. And again, it's a real mindset change, transformation change, again, compared to 20 years ago, where we are really focusing on, again, buying the best equipment, the lower cost, the best feature, of course. Now we need to integrate it. So for me, it's as well, at least for us, it's already a way. Innovation is not only technical innovation, but as well as process decision for investment and change of the company.
I think that's a great call out. It's about designing with the environment in mind.
Yeah,
exactly. Right from the beginning. Right from the beginning.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, bring us home, Fawn. What are your thoughts in this area?
I agree with everything Pascal and Nasreen said. It really, I agree completely. It has to start at the beginning in the supply. I think there's a lot of opportunities across all of the environmental programs with climate, energy efficiency, developing chemicals and gases that perform, that have a lower global warming potential, where you wouldn't even need to abatement technology improvements, circular economy strategies, changing from that culture of, start to finish and just kind of looping back those materials to use the supply chain. And, energy efficiency, availability of renewable electricity in our grid. So there's, that's one of the exciting things about being in the tech industry, is that I think those opportunities are limitless, and those are going to really make a huge impact for all of us to reduce our footprint.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, I'd like to wrap the panel. I want to thank Pascal, Fawn, and Nasreen for their outstanding contributions and the great discussion that followed, and some surprise questions from the Q&A chat room, which is always fun. I know we ran a little bit over. We're eating a little bit into the break, but I believe there's a break now until 9:30. So with that, again, thanks to you. Thanks to John for organizing this conference, and thanks to the audience for their active participation.
Thanks to you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.